Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei. I'm so excited to paint with you today. Today we're going to do another page in our Watercolor Journal books. I am using a 6x9 Bao watercolor sketchbook, 100% cotton, 140 pound cold press. My Core mini palette here today. I love Core by Golden. That's my preferred paint, but whatever you have will work for you. You can see links to these things in the description if you want to check anything out or learn more about them. And then I'm also using Velvet Touch brushes today, Princeton Velvet Touch. I have a 10, a 4, and a 6. I'm going to start with my size 6. And of course I have some water and a paper towel for dabbing off my brush. Okay, so today is going to be a nice simple floral day. We're going to do a floral illustration with some wide petaled flowers, some side views of that same flower. I'm going to do at least 2 different colors. I'm going to add in some flowers that have lots of tiny small little flowers and petals on a stem as well. So let's get started and make a color. Now we could start with just magenta or pink or red or purple. I think and I've already got a little dot on my page. I think I'm going to do, let's start with magenta, but I'm going to doctor it up a little bit. So this is my magenta. Actually, I have to move this because I'm going to use this part as a mixing palette as well. So let's start with magenta, but I'm going to add a little bit of Payne's gray to it. And it's going to make this duskier purple, magenta purple. There we go. And we'll swatch that out here. So I have this I have to make that a little bit nicer of a shape. So this nice little dusky pink, and I'm going to definitely use variations of value of that. I'm going to use sap green for sure. Here's my sap green for my leaves. And then I'm trying to think of what other color, either blues or yellows, I think. I think I have a nickel azo yellow in here, but then I also have this other bismuth yellow. I think maybe I'll go with the bismuth yellow. And maybe add little touches of orange to it. I have an orange in this palette, but I think I'm actually going to use, well, yeah, we'll start with the orange, and I can always add, let me add some, no, I don't want to add Payne's gray to it. What do I want to add? I'm going to add a little bit, I'm going to add the tiniest touch of blue to it. And basically I'm just making it more of a desaturated orange, like a more brownish orange. There we go, yeah. I'm only going to use this in very small amounts, I think, but that's going to be our color palette. All right, let's start with our magenta-y purple. And I'm going to try to create something like down the center here. So let's put down, using big swaths of my brush, I'm going to imagine there's a circle in the middle that I'm working around. And your petals don't have to be perfect. Don't try to make them perfect, like perfectly spaced every time. You do want them to have a little balance, but if like 2 run into each other and there's a little gap between others, that's okay. I like to leave white space in some of the petals. And then I also, I mixed in orange there. Well, we could drop in orange. I like to drop in a little extra color, wet on wet. This helps create variation in the tones, make it look a little more organic. Lovely. All right, so I'm gonna build in a few more like this. So more magenta, a little more Payne's gray. Whoa, that was a lot of Payne's gray. So Payne's gray has a blue tone to it. So you can see when I mixed my magenta with Payne's gray, it created a purple because it has those blue undertones. But I'm not quite, I don't want that quite that purple. There we go, that's a little better. These, this core mini palette with the pan paints, I am loving. It is super saturated, lovely colors. I'm really glad that I bought this. I normally use my really large core palette that's made from tube paints. All right, so let's try to create a couple of flowers that, like if we were seeing the side of the flower, we would see kind of the side of petals this way. So this is the side, and then I'm going to do another one up here. Maybe not as open, and then like this petal a little flatter and spread out to the side. And I can also add in some more droplets of color. I did pick up a little of that orange in here that I made earlier because I did it by accident on the first one, but I thought it looked really lovely. And let's do one more that's like a tiny bud, like just peeking out. I'm going to do one more of those actually on this side. And then, while this is still kind of wet, I'm going to take my sap green. And I'm actually going to switch brushes. I have a slightly smaller one. Or I'm going to use my rigger, or my script liner. Sometimes called a rigger, sometimes called a script liner. This one is labeled script liner, but it's a really long bristles, very thin, and it makes lovely thin lines. And I am going to, just from the bottom here, basically attaching all of these. We'll add leaves in later. So these are going to be going behind. And these bud ones, they're going to have lots of green kind of up the sides because they haven't fully emerged yet. So we'll make that a little more apparent. But I love this look when you drop in color at the bottom, like the green, and it kind of, this one won't do it because it's already too dry, and it's just damp enough that it still bleeds softly up into the petal. There we go. And basically trying to create a nice cohesive All right, so while that's drying, I'm going to add in some other flowers on this side, I think, that are a little different. All right, we're back. This is mostly dry, but it still has some work to do. I'm definitely going to put a center in here with some Payne's gray, I think. So that color should have definitely been out here as one of our colors. So we'll just swatch that out. All right, and let's add some yellow flowers, and I think with some little orange accent. So I'm just going to make some more of that orange over here with the tiniest bit of blue, giving us that nice rustic color. And then let's take out our yellow. We'll put a bunch of that over here. So I am going to use my size 4 brush because I'm going to make tiny little yellow flowers. So I think I'm just going to do a combination of tiny little blooms kind of on their sides. Rinse this off. This yellow is looking. So basically staying real loose. Some of them will have centers, some of them we won't see their centers. And actually, while that's there, I'm going to put in some stems to create kind of a roadmap for clusters. So I'm going to have one big stem down the center, and then off of that, I'm going to do some clusters. So I'll do some clusters down there. The hardest part for me sometimes is remembering that not every little bloom comes off the original stem. It's like a stem off a stem off a stem. I have to really force my brain to do that. So if I had like the main stem that came up here, this would come off here, and then this would come off here. I changed the angle a little bit, as you probably have noticed, so you can kind of see where we're going. And I think I'm going to do another bit of these that I'm going to layer behind these pink flowers. So we'll do some that go behind here as well. And maybe even, maybe I'll put like, well, let's put these in first before I get crazy with the composition. All right, so going back to, I'm just making little petals, petal, petal, petal. You can leave a little white in the middle. I'm making like little cups and scoops too that are like on the sides, kind of like the same way we did these big ones, where it's on the side, you'll only maybe see 3 petals. But this is so tiny that we don't want to get too caught up in the tiny little details. Now, I want to introduce some of this orange, but that's too much. They're too wet still. I think I'm gonna have to let them completely dry. Now I have to introduce some orange to some other spots. I'm going to pick that up with a little clean paper towel. Mistakes happen. They happen all the time. It's watercolor. Precision is not necessarily, not that people aren't super precise out there with watercolors, but it's not in its nature. Let's put it that way. It wants you to be a little bit looser, a little, or at least it lends itself to that. So just tucking in some little bobs and bells here. Put a few over here so it's kind of like nice little spray down the side. And then really I'm just putting in globs. And then I'm going to define them a little bit more with that orange center for the ones that do have a center. This one up here got very green. All right, so let's let those dry. This is dry over here, so I'm going to take some of my Payne's gray. I'm going to water it down. I'm going to put in a little round center. It's going to overlap a little bit, and then I'm going to take some darker gray. I'm going to drop it in. And some spots, I'm going to put in these little tiny dots around. And I'm going to take my rigger brush and just add some connections. I'm not going to worry about getting every single one of them. There we go. So that's my center on that one. The others don't really need one. And we're just waiting for these little yellow flowers to dry. So I'm going to use my rigger brush, even though this brush does not have as much control because of the long handle, or the long, I want to say stem. It's not stem, the long bristles on it. You can stay very thin, but when you're trying to paint like precise. So I'm just going to pop in a few centers in this orange. Some of these are still wet or a little damp. And then some I'm going to leave it out because it's meant to be on its side. And then I'm also going to take a little bit of Payne's gray, I think, and drop it right along the edge of some of these. So instead of connecting this one directly to the main stem, I made a stem and I've connected it to that. All right, I think it's time to add in some leaves to support these. And we could even go back to these flowers if we wanted to add some detail towards the center. If you wanted to, you could definitely leave them just the way they are. But if you wanted to add any shading, around some of the petals, especially where they like join, it's hard. You want to make sure you're not outlining perfectly, but creating a shadow. Let me switch back to my larger brush. And what I think it's also important to remember is that you don't always have to pick up more paint. Sometimes you're just going to be moving around the paint that's already on there, or just picking up water to help spread paint that's already existing on the page. Now I'm picking up more paint, but now I'm just rinsing my brush off. And a nice damp brush blending it out, and now I'm adding a little more paint. But you don't have to pick up paint every single time, and that trips a lot of people up. They're always trying to pick up more. And then things get out of control, or they can. There we go, just added a few darker shadowy areas kind of towards the base and where the petals overlap each other. And then I'm just rinsing off my brush, dabbing it off and blending them out so there aren't harsh lines. There we go. Makes it look a little bit more three-dimensional. In your center, if you want something even a little darker, a few spots, go back in with a little dark Payne's gray around the edge. Makes that a little bit more three-dimensional. And let's add in a few leaves, I think. Okay, so we'll go back to our Payne's, no, not our Payne's gray. We'll go back to our sap green. And I am just going to add in like 1 or 2 leaf structures. So a leaf structure having a couple of leaves on it. Switching back to my size 4 brush. And I think on this side, I'm actually going to do tiny leaves. Almost fern-like over here, okay? Let's see, I gotta move my body. Just because I don't want to move the book on you, so you can kind of see still. There we go. And to change up your green, sap green is a great color to start with, and if you want it to be more yellow or lighter, just add water and yellow. If you want it to have a cooler tone to it, add some Payne's gray or some ultramarine or some phthalo blue, and it will transform your green. And you have lots of different greens you can work from right from that one. So this is a darker kind of cooler, duskier blue. I added a little ultramarine to it. And I'm going to do a bigger leaf structure. It's going to have, I think, 3 leaves off of it. I'm leaving white space. And then I could go really light. So I just added a lot of water to my brush. So I can paint right over this stem, but the color I painted is so light, it actually looks like it's behind, if that makes sense. There we go. And maybe I'll just put something up here. I'm gonna put some small leaves, kind of poking out that side. And we'll do another one of these. Kind of fern-like. These parallel leaves. They're just parallel from each other on this on the stem. All right, there we go. That's our lovely little floral illustration today. Thank you for joining me. I'm Shayna Cersei. Don't forget to check out the description for links to supplies and materials. Leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and I will see you soon for our next watercolor journal page. Take care, y'all. Happy painting.